I had been contemplating on how to escape from my prison-like existence of complete misery for a long time. Wherever I went would be far better than staying in a country where I never felt at home. It was so obvious that I could only be assisted to fail in this country with all my undertakings. Miraculously, wonderful news became available. A German couple visiting Ankara were accommodated by those witness friends. I was looking forward to meeting them, and Vahan, the gentleman's costume designer, his family, and their friend Shahan, knowing my dilemma, were going to talk to them discreetly about how best I could be helped to move out, hopefully never to return back. This was going to open up new opportunities, and I was excited. However, long before that meeting, I was also introduced to Manfredi and his family. They were also members of the witnesses. Occasionally, I used to frequent their home, making some sound recordings of his children. At one stage, Manfredi suggested that I should not frequent his family too often, and it would be better when he was at home, although I only visited them once in a blue moon. I took this to be somewhat due to a mild jealousy on his part in case some unwanted relationship might develop, but soon discovered that he did not desire his neighbors to have false impressions about them, for they were strict witnesses. I thought they were my friends who trusted me completely, as I did them. He worked as a chef with the American forces. Later, they invited me to watch English-language films, such as the 10 Commandments and Exodus, on a big screen in the American military's theater. Through this opportunity, I started to learn Italian and could converse with Manfredi and his family at ease in a short while. Shahan, too, was attempting to learn that language, but at times tried to speak with me in French, sometimes wrongly pronouncing words I could not fully understand, upon which he would become frustrated, asking how it was possible for me not to understand what he said, until I had corrected his pronunciation. He might have thought that I was learning it at school, without realizing my lingual background. My mother was petrified if anyone came to the door preaching, and immediately told them where to go. She did so even shouting at them, telling a number of people, including the Mormons, not to disturb her any more. She told us that she did not want our brains being screwed up, and certainly did not wish any harm to come to her beloved sons. She did not want anybody interfering with our minds, rejecting those preachers for fear of being accused of associating with them, so my activities therefore had to remain secret. However, I had a different plan and agenda. My cousins were well befriended with those witnesses long before me being introduced to them. Kevork was often visited by Shahan in his dry-cleaning shop, while most of his clients were members of the American forces. Antoine, on the other hand, was employed as an interpreter for the Americans. We were led to believe that he also spent some time in the States, but I am unsure. I found myself making excuses when I went out with my friends, whether at school or during the holidays. On top of that, I felt the need to create other excuses when I went to see my witness friends. Whenever I was engaged with my girlfriend, I had to tell little white lies such as I was going to the library for an assignment because I did not want my mother to worry unnecessarily. Unfortunately, I was also forced to tell her little fibs when I met all my other friends, as I did not want her to think that some of them were brainwashing me, for that would worry her a lot. But I was not happy about telling things which were untrue. Whenever I met my witness friends and others, I felt like a young individual needing to have a few minor secrets, not telling everything to everybody. However, I could understand my mother's concerns. I respected and loved her immensely for everything she was and everything she represented. No, Mom, I am not going to upset you by making my girlfriend pregnant. That would present a huge responsibility. My religious friends are never going to hypnotize me, for they oppose it, as if it is a part of devil worship. My beloved Mom, I would like to reassure you that they are not going to turn me into a zombie. I am only an observer, and may learn things from them, but no, I am only going to remain with them as just friends. My dear mother told Haldun to follow me wherever I went to find out what I was up to, but I pretended that I did not know. The poor boy often followed me for a while, and then I would suddenly disappear. When home, he would tell our mother what had happened, and it went on for quite a while like that. I used to do a trick, and became invisible even if he stood next to me. Sometimes I was doing the same to him instead, knowing where he was going. Call it a magician's secret if you like. It remains my little secret. I can tell you just this much. I was different, like a few others around the world. I am not the only one. I recall the days when I loved singing in the boys' choir at school, and even the church choir. In Ankara, things remained always poles apart, for I missed my singing there. Choir singing through the foreign language schools always presented an ever-needed change. As time went by and I matured, on occasions I was encouraged to give short talks from a platform in the high school auditorium, and it became a delightful experience. Being appreciated was always welcome. On one occasion, Shahan attended my mini-lecture, which was all about peace on earth. And if people would simply accept one another and work together towards benefiting the entire world, it would be easier to find ways of traveling through interstellar space, perhaps even populating other planets towards a peaceful future. Although my knowledge was influenced by intergalactic friends from elsewhere, and not on Jehovah's Witness teachings, he was delighted with the experience just like other people within that auditorium. Doing something like that was unusual, and a few expressed how wonderful it was to see a youth think that way. Shahan said that if he attempted to do something like that, he would be shot. On another occasion, during one of those holiday periods, my brother and I were invited to a picnic organized by friends belonging to the Witnesses. It may sound as if I was closely involved with them, or even supporting their ethics, although I was not. They seemed to be very decent people with good principles, not hurting anybody, and in appearance always considerate towards each other. Much later, in my adult years, I was to learn a lot more about them. Other people I was befriended with would probably be just the same, and even if they were not involved in that belief system. Years later, I learned that their friendship was simply to convert me to their way of living. What if I was completely convinced that their belief system was the only truth, perhaps even being baptized as they were ardently encouraging me to do? But if later I was to show some disagreement with their way of thinking, how would they behave towards me? Remembering that we are all living in a human world, and I could also do things contrary to any religious faith, would they punish me? I was hearing stories about people suffering emotional pain, and was not prepared to have any more, as I had already experienced it throughout my childhood. Going back to the occasion when I went on that picnic with my brother, there was going to be lots of good food and a Bible discussion. I thought that it could be an interesting experience for my brother, and this way, when our mother questioned him on what it was all about, she would hear the same stories from him as from me, and would see that there was no harm in associating with people like them. But as I said before, I was yet to discover more. My brother and I took a walk in a bush-like environment, but a short while later he was suddenly lost from sight. I could hear the sounds of people eating, drinking tea and coffee, talking all kinds of subjects, laughing, and children playing, but I was lost. Knowing they were not far away, I called out to my brother very loudly. I decided to remain where I was, and was quite upset. I also felt extremely hungry, for I only had a very light breakfast that morning, believing I was to share food with my friends. For a while, nobody searched for me, obviously not noticing that I was missing. A long while passed, and then I noticed one of the children running down the hill. When I was reunited with the group, they already had their picnic lunch, and was told they had heard me shout. I was extremely shocked to discover that nobody attempted to do anything about it. It taught me to be very cautious when going to places with other people. It taught me never to trust anybody, friend or foe. It seemed they could ignore such an important situation, even after almost an hour of calling my brother's name and shouting loudly that I could not find my way, asking if someone could help me. That was an experience one could not easily forget, for I was completely ignored. All kinds of ugly things passed through my mind. Later, Shahan told me that all heard my voice loud and clear. They all heard my desperate calls, and yet they sent no one to help me rejoin them. They were, in truth, very annoyed with me calling for help. I felt that Shahan probably thought that they had to concentrate on more important things, like reading their Bibles in time, and not worrying about me, the silly boy who had wandered off. It seemed that I was not important. I said nothing to any of them, but it made me think. It was the first time my brother had come on such an outing with me, but I could not enjoy my day, for it was ruined. This first ever experience of the unwanted kind was the start of important discoveries in regard to Jehovah's Witnesses over the years. During the early days of my association with them, I discovered that they were completely against formal education and science under the umbrella of imagined materialism. Apparently, formal education led to worldliness, devil worship, and the root of all evil, namely, the love of money. They were led to believe that the faithful were to live in a new world order, and everybody adhering to their theocratic disciplines would then have a chance to educate themselves.